It's 7 p.m. Wednesday, June 12th here in Seoul.
Coming up on NEWSCENTER tonight. With hopes of gathering support from Northern Europe for his peace drive, President Moon Jae-in gives a speech in the Norwegian capital of Oslo.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's sister sends her condolences to South Korea following the death of former First Lady Lee Hee-ho.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he's received a, quote, beautiful letter from Kim Jong-un, while Trump's national security advisor says a possible third meeting between the two leaders is in Pyongyang's hands. This as both nations mark 1 year since their historic summit.
And for the first time ever, South Korea's under-20 football team heads to the under-20 World Cup final after beating Ecuador 1-0 in Poland. We take a closer look at Team Korea's historic moment. NEWSCENTER begins now. Good evening and welcome to Arirang NEWSCENTER, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Noadam.
And I'm Han-daeun. Welcome to our program. President Moon Jae-in is in Norway on the second leg of his three-nation Northern European tour. The president is giving a speech in Oslo to speak about peace on the Korean peninsula.
And for more details, let's connect to our Park Hee-jun, who is on the line for us. Hee-jun, fill us in.
Talon Aram, this is perhaps the most anticipated event of President Moon's three-day trip to Norway, especially because today marks the one-year anniversary of the historic summit between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump in Singapore. The speech was scheduled to begin at noon local time. That makes it 7 p.m. Korea time, so just a couple of moments ago. He's addressing the Norwegian king, government officials, students, and the people at the Oslo Forum taking place at the University of Oslo. A Blue House official told reporters earlier that the speech will focus on peace for the people. Norway is well known for its welfare policies, gender equality, and innovation, but it's probably best known for being the country that awards the Nobel Peace Prize. Late former President Kim Dae-jung received the prize back in 2000, recognized for his sunshine policy toward North Korea. And it's also well known that establishing permanent, lasting peace on the Korean peninsula is a key vision being pushed by President Moon and his administration. The South Korean president is likely to reaffirm his determination to continue on the journey to achieving this goal.
Now, Hee-jun, President Trump has revealed earlier today that he received what he called a beautiful letter from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Is that likely to affect President Moon's address?
Well, Trump's announcement came less than a day ago, so it's difficult to say how much of it will be reflected in today's address. Rather, attention is being paid to whether the president will lay out a new vision, as he did in Berlin 2 years ago. During a trip to Germany in July 2017, President Moon explicitly said he was willing to meet Chairman Kim, and that opened a fresh chapter of renewed inter-Korean relations. It led to the North participating in the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics and also helped lay the groundwork for the first Kim-Trump summit. But this year, the number of exchanges has seen a significant drop compared to 2018. Today, the president could again lay out a roadmap aiming to restore the denuclearization talks between Pyongyang and Washington, as well as revive stalled inter-Korean relations. And the president is likely to ask for continued support from Norway and also from other Northern European nations. President Moon has been optimistic that the two Koreas will be able to resume talks soon. He will be taking questions after his speech, so we may be able to get a better insight into his thoughts on the recent developments. And we'll also have to keep an eye out for his another speech at the National Assembly in Sweden, scheduled to take place this Friday. We'll keep you updated on that. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Hee-jun, for that. Do keep us posted throughout this evening. North Korea expressed condolences on the death of South Korea's former First Lady Lee Hee-ho. This afternoon, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's sister, Kim Yo-jong, handed over condolence flowers and messages to South Korea's top security officials at the inter-Korean border village of Panmunjom. Let's connect to our Oh Jung-hee, who's on the line for us from Seoul's Unification Ministry. Jung-hee, how did the meeting at the inter-Korean border go?
Hey, Don, the government officials were there to receive the flowers and message say today's conversation between the two sides were strictly focused on condolences on the death of the former First Lady Lee Hee-ho. At 5 p.m. Korea time, just 2 hours ago, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's sister Kim Yo-jong appeared at the inter-Korean truce village of Panmunjom, along with a senior official from the regime's United Front department. She delivered condolence flowers and messages to 3 South Korean officials, National Security Advisor Chung Jung-yong, Vice Unification Minister Seo Ho, and lawmaker Park Ji-won from the Party for Democracy and Peace. The two sides talked for about 15 minutes. Kim Yo-jong delivered Kim Jong-un's message that the two Koreas should continue to work on inter-Korean cooperation following the former First Lady Lee Hee-ho's wish to achieve reconciliation between the South and North. South Korean officials have told Kim that they're sorry the North is not sending a delegation to the South this time, but still appreciates the condolences. According to Seoul's presidential office, the North Korean leader's sister said he has special feelings towards Lee and thought that it'd be better to deliver condolences directly to high-level South Korean officials, but she didn't explain why the North is not sending a delegation. Lee Hee-ho is the wife of Kim Dae-jung, who was South Korea's president from 1998 to 2003 and made efforts to activate inter-Korean exchanges and promote reconciliation through the Sunshine Policy. She visited North Korea in 2011 when Kim Jong-il, former North Korean leader and Kim Jong-un's father, died. Pyongyang sent delegations across the border to express condolences when figures who contributed to improving inter-Korean relations died. For example, in 2001, when Hyundai Group founder Chung Jung-yong died, and in 2009, when former President Kim Dae-jung died. So there were expectations that the North could possibly send a delegation to the South this time as well, in a move to resume inter-Korean dialogue amid stalled nuclear negotiations, but the North chose not to.
Our Oh Jung-hee at the Unification Ministry for us tonight. Thank you. U.S. President Donald Trump says he's got another letter from Kim Jong-un. It's a sign, he says, of the good relationship they continue to have despite the denuclearization talks having stalled. Our Kim Hyo-sun reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump says he received a, quote, beautiful letter from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
And I just received a beautiful letter from Kim Jong-un. And I think the relationship is very well, but I appreciated the letter.
This is the first time Trump has revealed a letter from Kim since the Hanoi summit ended prematurely with no deal in late February. Speaking to reporters at the White House on Tuesday, President Trump held a letter but said he couldn't reveal any of the content. He also spoke highly of Kim's leadership, adding the North has great potential considering its location and people. Explaining there is a stark difference between now and when he first became president, Trump again stressed that North Korea hasn't conducted any nuclear or major missile tests in more than a year and a half.
We have a very good relationship together. Now I can confirm it because of the letter I got yesterday. And I think that something will happen that's going to be very positive.
He also commented on this week's Wall Street Journal report that said Kim's half-brother Kim Jong-nam, who was killed at Kuala Lumpur International Airport in 2017, was a source for the CIA. Trump insisted such a thing would not happen while he's in office. Meanwhile, speaking at a business forum hosted by the Wall Street Journal on Tuesday, Trump's National Security Advisor John Bolton mentioned that a potential third Trump-Kim summit is in Pyongyang's hands. Despite the letter from Kim Jong-un, it remains to be seen whether Pyongyang and Washington can rebuild momentum in stalled nuclear talks, a year since the leaders first met in Singapore for their first ever summit. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Today marks exactly 1 year since the historic first encounter between U.S. President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. There have been positive developments since the Singapore summit, with North Korea ending its nuclear testing and South Korea and the U.S. cutting down their joint military drills. But following the Hanoi summit in February, such positive atmosphere somewhat sizzled out. Our Lee Ji-won heard from experts for further analysis.
Communication between Pyongyang and Washington was said to be ongoing behind doors even after the Hanoi summit fallout, as shown by Kim Jong-un's recent letter to President Trump announced earlier. But despite this, senior U.S. officials' request to resume denuclearization talks with the North seem to be going unanswered or declined, as they say there are no significant announcements to be made. Thus, some pundits say that Pyongyang holds the key to breaking the current impasse.
I would say that the breakthrough will come when Kim Jong-un truly decides to denuclearize and show some concrete actions. If the North continues to remain firm in its stance to only give up a part of its nuclear program, talks won't resume anytime soon, and even if they do, they won't lead to any kind of agreement.
But other experts, more lenient with Pyongyang's attitude, do not agree.
In negotiations, when the weaker side bends in, it's called surrendering, but when the stronger side yields, it's called embracing. So it'd be easier to solve this impasse if the U.S. shows more flexibility in regards to the North's request, which has been, since the Hanoi summit, a guarantee to its sovereign safety. In that sense, the U.S. could choose to set up a joint liaison office or even declare a peace treaty.
While some experts said that both sides need to yield, one expert was very skeptical about these talks resuming and coming down to a deal.
After all the propaganda on dealing with the US, it would be difficult for Kim to yield first. Such a move could be interpreted by North Koreans as their supreme leader admitting to having made a mistake. That is unacceptable, but the same goes for US President Trump. After all the criticism of the previous administrations over their North Korea policies, it would be hard for him to reward the North without any concrete denuclearization measures.
The expert added that a vicious cycle of provocation, tension, negotiation, and cooling has been on repeat for 30 years, and that this time is actually no different from the past. Although experts differed in their approach regarding breakthrough, many were hopeful that the Moon-Trump summit slated for the end of the month could become a turning point.
There won't be any new messages coming out from the summit, but U.S. President Trump will likely continue to relay his friendly messages towards Kim Jong-un, and I think it'll be a good opportunity for him to come back to the negotiation table.
And while experts agree that there is not much that South Korea can do at this point, Professor Yang says Seoul should continue to play the role of mediator.
Both sides are firm in their stances, and yielding in first could be thought as a show of weakness, which would further stop them from actually giving in first. Thus, Seoul needs to maintain talks with both sides and urge them to yield.
Research fellow Chun, on the other hand, says that Seoul should not try to understand the regime when holding talks, but show what an isolated world it is living in and persuade it to change. 이지원, Arirang News.
Staying with the topic, while some believe that unprecedented progress has been made in denuclearizing North Korea, some remain skeptical that the progress made so far would result in tangible outcome. To get some clues on what we could expect going forward, our Yoon Jung-min heard from another expert.
It has been exactly 1 year since North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Donald Trump met in Singapore for the first ever talks between the leaders of their two countries. The historic summit somewhat helped improve their bilateral ties, but there have been ups and downs as their second summit in Hanoi ended with no deal in February. Some experts have pointed to the lack of progress between Pyongyang and Washington when asked about how far both sides have come in terms of denuclearization.
As far as I know, they haven't dismantled any missiles. And, if you believe what you read in the failing New York Times and elsewhere, they're actually increased fissile material production. So it seems like the North Korea nuclear program is either static or advanced. So no denuclearization to date at all.
Mr. King also said the definition of denuclearization differs between North Korea and the U.S., which makes it difficult for both sides to reach an agreement.
Kim apparently wants some denuclearization in exchange for effectively complete sanctions relief, and Trump, to his credit, now wants complete denuclearization of North Korea. So until we bridge that gap, I don't see any real progress.
On Tuesday, Trump said he had received a, quote, beautiful letter from Kim raising hopes for another Kim-Trump summit. The expert said he was positive when it comes to future talks, as Trump can use the talks for political purposes ahead of the presidential election.
Well, I definitely expect a third summit, probably before the U.S. election, so that Trump can again badmouth his predecessors and say he's done something that no other U.S. president has done.
However, he also said there is, quote, a parallel universe for North Korea policies inside the White House, hinting at some gap between President Trump and the rest of his government officials. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Let's turn to some sports news now, and some big sports news at that. South Korea's under-20 football squad made history Tuesday evening in Poland, beating Ecuador to head to the World Cup final for the first time. Team Korea will face the Ukraine for the title on Saturday. Lee Seung-jae reports.
The future of South Korean football looks brighter than ever as the South Korean U20 squad, led by manager Chung Jung-yong, defeated Ecuador 1-0 in the semi-final on Tuesday evening at the Arena Lublin. The lone goal came in the 38th minute with another precision pass by Lee Gang-in, allowing Chejun to find space and slot in a brilliant close-range goal for what would be, ultimately, the winning goal. However, with so many late goals throughout this year's tournament, this match was no different. With 4 minutes added on for injury time, South Korea breathed a sigh of relief after a goal by Ecuador was disallowed for offside. And with just seconds left on the clock, a super save by South Korean goalkeeper Lee Kwang-yeon preserved the slim lead, booking the squad's ticket in their first ever U20 final. The trip to the final is also the first ever in history for men's football in any FIFA tournament. Ukraine will be their opponents in Saturday's final. The Eastern European side brushed aside Italy in their semi-final earlier in the day. The final kicks off at Stadion Uchi in Lodz on Saturday 6 p.m. local time, which is 1 a.m. Sunday, Korea Standard Time. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, let's take a closer look at Tuesday's match, and for that, we are pleased to have Paul Neat, Associate Editor for K-League United, joining us in the studio tonight. Mr. Neat, thank you for coming in this evening. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
Let's get to it. Let's have a look back at the match now. A clever free kick, or a sneaky free kick, shall we say, by Lee Gang-in to set up Chejun for the one and only and winning goal in the match. How do you assess Tuesday's match? Do you think it was a well-deserved win?
I think it was, yes. They had a bit of luck, obviously, with the offside goal that was called off towards the end, but and they rode their luck as well defensively. But you're going to find that in a young team. Defensively, they're a little bit naive at times, but in the end, they had that little bit of extra that other teams haven't had so far in the tournament, with Lee Kang-in with that amazing assist. And that was his 4th assist of the tournament so far, so it just shows how important he's been.
Yeah. The under-20 squad were considered underdogs before going into this competition. Now they are in the final. What do you think has been the driving force behind their impressive form during the tournament, and how will this help in the final with the Ukraine?
I think it's experience. Now, that's quite unusual to say about a youth tournament,
right.
But if you compare the squad from 2 years ago, the World Cup that was here in Korea, there was only around 37 appearances made in the domestic league in Korea amongst the squad. That figure is now around 158.
Wow.
So, given the fact that these players are now playing week in, week out for some K-League 1 teams and some K-League 2 teams, that bit of experience is getting them over the line, I think.
Right. Now, the under-20s are Korea's first men's national team, in fact, to have reached the final of any FIFA-organised tournament. So quite an impressive milestone. And if we refresh our memories, the closest we got to a final was the senior team back in 2002 in the World Cup being held here and in Japan. What does this latest achievement mean for the future of South Korean football? And will South Korea now be considered serious contenders for titles?
We'd still like to hope so. I mean, the Asian Games last year, and obviously this final appearance this year, it shows that there was a lot of good young players coming through. And with the Asian Cup coming up in the next 4 years, you would like to hopefully see some of these players play their way into the senior team. And if they can show how good they are at youth level, there's no reason why they can't do it, eventually play their way into the senior team.
Right, right. Right, now there's a lot of scouts at this competition, the Under-20 World Cup, from clubs all around the world and, of course, Europe's top leagues as well. Do you think any South Korean players might have caught the eye of one or two of them, and if so, who do you think those players might be?
Yeah, there's a player for FC Seoul, Chung Jung-yong, who's a striker. He was with Korea University at the last World Cup. He's become quite an important player for FC Seoul. He's not had as much time this season, but last year he was used quite a lot in various different positions. He's one definitely for scouts to look for, I think.
Good, good. So hopefully there'll be some good news, maybe some phone calls coming in as well. I'm afraid that's all the time we have for you this evening. Mr. Paul Neate, thank you very much for coming in this evening.
Thank you.
Now, as we said, not many outside the team expected the young Taeguk Warriors to make it to the final, and our Won Jung-hwan now reports on what their head coach had to say.
South Korea's under-20 football team beat Ecuador 1-0 to reach the final of the under-20 World Cup, with Choi-jun scoring the only goal of the game in the 39th minute of the semi-final. Now, the under-20 side faces Ukraine in the final and has a chance to make history, as Saturday's game is South Korea's first trip to any final at a men's FIFA tournament. The only time in the past that any Korean side has reached a final of a FIFA tournament was in 2010, when the women's team won the Under-17 World Cup. To reach this far, head coach Chung Jung-yong has proven to be quite the tactician, and he's not been afraid to make significant adjustments, not just from match to match, but from one half to the next. And the players have brought into whatever Chung has been preaching and executed his plans almost perfectly.
We have changed tactics accordingly by shifting from 4 at the back to 5 at the back. We were prepared for these things already, so depending on the situation, depending on whether we had to attack, counter or defend, we shifted around our players to deal with our opponents.
Chung said he knew Ecuador weren't going to be easy opponents, though beating them 1-0 in a friendly match last month certainly helped with the players' confidence and also helped Chung learn what their weaknesses are.
As Ecuador are a very strong team, especially in attack, we thought we can take advantage of some chances if we defend well. Also, we had a tune-up match before the tournament, so I think those preparations contributed to our victory today.
But Chung and the under-20s have been working on these tactics long before the start of the tournament.
I handed out a tactical note to each player at last year's qualifying tournament. I shared our formation with the players and made them understand how they need to work it out as a team. And I think that image training before the actual tournament has helped them develop further.
So here they are now, one win away from the ultimate prize. And for this group of dazzling young players with a great technician as their head coach, it is a real chance to make history. Won Jung-hwan, Arirang News.
Now to the latest on the tragic sinking late last month of a tourist boat in Budapest, Hungary. The boat's been raised from the bottom of the Danube and relocated a little further downstream, where a team of South Koreans have gone inside of it to look for more bodies. They went in at around 5 p.m. Korea time. Meanwhile, there are 5 other vessels being used by South Koreans to search the site where the tourist boat sank, and the Hungarians have sent a helicopter. The search will mainly focus on the bottom of the boat itself and downstream from where it sank. It's hard to predict how long the search will take, but the South Korean authorities say it is still going on because the boat is full of sand and dirt. Hungary's prosecution, meanwhile, will be investigating, with 4 more bodies retrieved on Tuesday. The death stands at 24, with 4 people still missing. The government has released its latest jobs report, and data shows the number of new jobs are finally on the upswing. To tell us more about the issue, we have our Ko Ryun-hee in the studio with us. Ryun-hee, let's start off by summarizing today's jobs report.
Sure. So one of the main indices included in the jobs report is the on-year increase of the number of employed. And according to Statistics Korea, the total number of employed people in May was around 27.3 million, up 259,000 on year. The increase had been under the 200,000 mark for 12 consecutive months until January, but started to improve in February. Last month's uptake was mainly due to more new jobs in the health and social work sectors, which jumped by 124,000. Analysts say this comes after the government created more public sector jobs in those fields. Jobs in accommodation and the food service sectors also saw an increase of 60,000, thanks to more foreigners visiting South Korea. And another positive sign was the employment rate among people aged 15 to 64. It marked 67.1%, the highest for the month of May since data was first compiled in 1989.
So it's good to see at least some gradual signs of recovery in the jobs market. So just looking at the number of new jobs and the employment rate, the overall situation doesn't look that bad, am I right?
Well, unfortunately, a more thorough analysis of the report shows there are negative aspects as well. So the number of jobs continues to decline on year in the manufacturing sector, which is considered South Korea's key growth engine. The number of employed people in that specific sector fell by more than 70,000 on year and has been falling on year since April last year. The manufacturing industry has been going through some problems, such as restructuring in ship and auto industries. Other analysts point to falling exports due to the slower growth of the global economy as the reason for the decline. And one of the biggest hits came from China. The latest data by the Korea Customs Service shows outbound shipments to China dropped by more than 26% on year during the first 10 days of June. So this is also related to a decrease in the number of jobs for people in their 30s and 40s in May, as many people in that age bracket work in manufacturing, and raises a red flag as people in that age range are supposed to be actively engaged in economic activities. So staying on the age topic, let's take a look at a change in number of people employed in May by age group. We can see that the number have increased a lot in the group aged 60 years and older. It jumped by 354,000, which contributed the most to the overall number of new jobs. An expert in the field explained the reason behind this trend.
The South Korean government generally tries to stimulate the economy by expansionary fiscal spending. One example is creating jobs in the public sector. And recently, many public jobs were created for people aged 60 and older because they were economically weaker than others.
So it seems like today's jobs report is sending mixed signals. Any feedback from the government so far?
Yes. So speaking to reporters, Finance Minister Hong Nam-ki said the number of newly employed shows that Korea is recovering from a slump in the job market. He also said the government will try its best to continue the trend. The ministry also pointed out that the overall unemployment rate was left unchanged at 4% in May. However, some analysts say the role of the private sector is more important than the government, so efforts to boost the company's investment should continue as well.
So it appears creating an environment where companies can boost their investments is critical at this point, and hopefully the government can play quite a big role to support that. Thank you, Junie, for that report tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Thousands of protesters have blocked access to Hong Kong's government headquarters and legislature, causing the delay of a debate on a controversial extradition bill that would allow suspects to be sent to mainland China for trial. Our Choi Si-young has the latest.
Hong Kong's Legislative Council released a statement Wednesday saying that the debate on the controversial extradition bill would be changed to a later time. Earlier in the morning, the protesters, mostly young people and students, surrounded Hong Kong's legislature where the bill, which would allow suspects to be sent to mainland China for trial, was due for a second round of debate. Skirmishes between the protesters and police broke out, with police deploying rounds of tear gas. 19 demonstrators have been arrested so far. The ongoing rallies are the largest Hong Kong has seen since it was handed back to China by the British in 1997. The proposed bill has faced widespread criticism that it'll undermine the independence of the semi-autonomous region's legal system and put Hong Kong citizens and foreign nationals at risk. Carrie Lam, Hong Kong's chief executive, has tried to make reassurances that the government is working on adding amendments to the bill to better safeguard human rights. But many still fear if it's passed, it'll make political activists more vulnerable to abduction by Beijing. The measure is likely to pass in the local legislature where pro-Beijing lawmakers hold 43 of the 70 seats. Choi Si-young, Arirang News.
Bank of Korea chief Lee Hee-ho has hinted at an interest rate cut. In a speech today commemorating the central bank's 69th anniversary, he said there might be a need to take what he called appropriate measures, which is being widely interpreted as an openness to lower rates. At an economy-related ministers' meeting on the same day, Finance Minister Hong Nam-ki also cited the US-China trade war as a downside risk and vowed to help Korean exporters. US President Donald Trump has stressed he will not complete a trade deal with China unless Beijing returns to the terms negotiated earlier in the year. He also told reporters on Tuesday that he was the one holding up the deal. His comments came a day after he threatened to further raise tariffs on Chinese goods if President Xi Jinping doesn't sit down with him for talks during the G20 summit in Osaka later this month. Beijing said it's open to continued trade talks with Washington, adding it's not afraid to fight a trade war. However, it remains silent on a possible meeting between Presidents Xi and Trump in Japan. Samsung Electronics has been chosen as Asia's favorite consumer brand for the 8th straight year. Marketing firms Campaign Asia Pacific and Nielsen surveyed consumers in 14 markets across the region. Samsung was followed by Apple, Panasonic and Sony. A recent study shows that a person ingests an average of 2,000 pieces of microplastic each week, the same weight as a credit card. The joint study conducted by the Worldwide Fund for Nature and Newcastle University found that the most common way of ingesting microplastic is by drinking water, followed by consuming shellfish, salt and beer. It's the first time the exact microplastic intake has been measured, which will help scientists figure out the potential dangers of microplastic to the human body. That has been your 3-minute news flash.
Clear, sunny skies today meant an increase in the temperature.
And sunny spells are forecast for the rest of the week. Let's get more from our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle.
Good evening, guys. Now, Thursday afternoon is expected to be scorching hot as the cool easterly wind weakens and humid air makes its way onto the peninsula. And meanwhile, Beijing can expect a rainstorm with daily highs expected to be the same as Seoul. The nation will start off sunny tomorrow, Seoul and Jeju kicking off to 18 degrees Celsius, whereas Daegu and Gyeongju will begin a few notches lower. And apply a good amount of sunblock before heading outside, as it will be very sunny with high UV index levels. Now, Seoul will reach up to 28 degrees, while Daejeon makes it all the way up to 30 degrees. Hot weather will persist until next Monday, but the capital will get a break from the heat on Tuesday when some rain is in the forecast. So stay cool until then. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That will do it for this edition of Arirang News. Thank you as always for watching.
News in Depth is next.